I never thought a forgotten phone would change my entire life. My name is Adrian, and 3 months ago, I was living 2 separate existences. The dutiful son my parents thought they knew. And the real me, the one who was completely, desperately in love with a guy named Ethan. I'd been so careful, so meticulous about keeping these worlds apart. Every text deleted, every photo hidden, every moment together planned like a covert operation. But on a rainy Tuesday evening in October, I made one mistake, just one. I left my phone on the kitchen counter when I went to take a shower. When I came back downstairs, my mother was sitting at the dining table, my phone in her trembling hands, tears streaming down her face. My father stood behind her, his expression unreadable, that terrifying calm before the storm. They knew everything, and what happened next. It wasn't what I expected. Not at all. This is the story of how the worst moment of my life became the catalyst for the most beautiful transformation. I could never have imagined a journey of heartbreak, courage, unexpected allies, and a love that refused to hide anymore. The silence in that dining room was suffocating. I stood there, water still dripping from my hair onto the hardwood floor, wearing nothing but sweatpants and a t-shirt, feeling more exposed than I'd ever felt in my life. My phone sat on the table between us like evidence at a crime scene. My mother's eyes were red and swollen. My father's jaw was clenched so tight I could see the muscle twitching beneath his skin. Adrian. My father's voice was quiet, controlled. That scared me more than if he'd been yelling. Sit down. My legs felt like they might give out anyway, so I obeyed, pulling out a chair across from them. The distance felt like miles. How long? My mother asked, her voice breaking on the second word. She couldn't even look at me. I knew what she was asking. How long had I been lying to them? How long had I been this way? Mom, how long? My father's tone left no room for evasion. Always, I whispered. The truth felt like glass in my throat. I've always known, but Ethan, we've been together for 8 months. My mother made a sound somewhere between a sob and a gasp. She pressed her hand to her mouth, shaking her head as if she could deny reality itself. 8 months, my father repeated slowly, his dark eyes boring into mine. 8 months of lying to us. To your family. To everyone who knows you. I wasn't lying about who I am, I said, finding a spark of defiance despite my fear. I was just protecting myself. And him, protecting. My father stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor with a harsh sound that made me flinch. You think sneaking around, bringing shame to this family, is protection? There it was. The word I'd been dreading. Shame. Roberto, please, my mother started. But he held up his hand. We raised you better than this, Adrian. We gave you everything. A good home, good values, a faith to guide you. He was pacing now, his hands clasped behind his back in that way he did when he was trying to contain his anger. And this is how you repay us? By choosing this lifestyle? It's not a choice, Dad. My voice was stronger now, though my hands were shaking in my lap. I didn't choose to be gay any more than you chose to be straight. Don't. His finger pointed at me like a weapon. Don't try to justify this with some progressive propaganda. This is not who you are. This is confusion, influence. Maybe that boy has Ethan didn't make me gay. I stood now too, my chair scraping back. I've felt this way since I was 12 years old. Do you think I wanted this? Do you think I wanted to spend my entire teenage years feeling like I was broken? Like I was wrong? The words were tumbling out now, years of suppression breaking through the dam. I prayed, Dad. I prayed so hard for God to change me, to make me normal. I cried myself to sleep wondering why I couldn't just be the son you wanted. And then I met Ethan, and for the first time in my life, I didn't feel broken. I felt whole. I felt seen. I felt loved. My mother was crying openly now, her shoulders shaking. My father's face had gone pale, his anger mixing with something else. Spain, maybe? Confusion? Who else knows? He asked quietly. It's just my friends. Maya and Josh? No one else. Thank God for small mercies, he muttered. Then, looking at me directly, this doesn't leave this house. Do you understand? Until we figure out what to do about this situation, no one can know. Not your aunts, not your cousins, not anyone at church.
What do you mean, figure out what to do?
A cold dread settled in my stomach. There are programs, my mother said, her voice thick with tears. Good Christian programs that help people overcome these. Urges your father and I will research them. No, the word came out flat, final. Absolutely not. Conversion therapy doesn't work, Mom. It's been discredited by every major medical and psychological organization. It's harmful. You're an expert now. My father interrupted. You've done your research between sneaking around with this boy. His name is Ethan. I shouted, finally losing my composure. He's not this boy. He's smart and kind and gentle. He's studying environmental science because he wants to make the world better. He volunteers at the animal shelter. He remembers my coffee order and leaves me notes in my textbooks and makes me laugh when I'm stressed about exams. He's the best person I've ever known. And yes, I love him. I'm in love with him. The confession hung in the air like smoke after a gunshot. My father's expression hardened. Then you have a choice to make, Adrian. Your family or him? The ultimatum I'd been dreading. The one I'd seen play out in countless coming out stories. The one I'd prayed I'd never face. Roberto, maybe we shouldn't, my mother began.
How, Carmen?
He needs to understand the consequences of his choices. My father's voice was ice. If you continue this relationship, if you choose to pursue this lifestyle, you cannot live under this roof. We will not enable behavior that goes against everything we believe in. The room tilted. You're kicking me out? We're giving you a choice, he clarified. End this relationship. Get the help you need. Come back to your faith and your family. Or choose him and face the consequences of that decision. My mother was sobbing now, her face in her hands. Please, Adrian. Please, just try. For us. We love you so much. We just want what's best for you. I looked at them, both these people who'd raised me, fed me, taught me to ride a bike, and helped me with homework, and celebrated every birthday and milestone. These people who loved me, or at least loved the version of me they thought they knew. And I thought about Ethan, his ocean blue eyes that crinkled at the corners when he smiled. The way he played with my hair when we watched movies together. How safe I felt in his arms, like I could finally breathe after holding my breath my entire life. The plans we'd made, whispered in the dark, moving in together after graduation, adopting a dog, building a life where we didn't have to hide. I need to think, I said finally. My voice hollow. You have until this weekend, my father said. We'll discuss this again on Sunday after church. And in the meantime, you will not see that boy. You will not contact him. Is that clear? It wasn't clear. Nothing was clear. But I nodded because I didn't have the strength to fight anymore. I went upstairs to my room, locked the door, and finally let myself fall apart. I sat on the floor of my bedroom with my back against the door, my phone clutched in my hands. I had 17 missed messages from Ethan, each one a small knife to my heart. Hey babe, you okay? Haven't heard from you in a while. Everything good, Adrian? You're making me worried now. Please just let me know you're safe. I wanted to call him so badly. To hear his voice, to let him tell me everything would be okay even if it wouldn't be. But my parents' voices echoed in my head, you will not contact him. My room felt like a museum of my fake life. Trophies from track and field. Honor roll certificates. A framed photo of our family at my high school graduation, all of us smiling like we didn't have secrets tearing us apart. I looked at that photo my father's proud expression, my mother's beaming face, and wondered if I'd ever see them look at me that way again. The rain outside had intensified, drops pelting against my window like tiny fists. The sound usually calmed me, but tonight it just felt ominous, like the universe itself was weeping for what I was about to lose. I opened my phone's photo gallery, scrolling through the hidden folder where I kept pictures of Ethan and me together. There we were at the beach last summer, his arm around my shoulders, both of us sunburned and grinning. At the botanical gardens, posing in front of the cherry blossoms. At his apartment, a selfie taken in bed, wholesome. It's just us in t-shirts and messy hair, but intimate in a way that made my chest ache. 8 months of memories. 8 months of being myself, of being happy, of being loved. 8 months that I might have to erase to keep my family. But could I? Could I really go back into the closet? Pretend Ethan was just a friend? Let my parents drag me to conversion therapy to fix something that wasn't broken? Could I sit through Sunday dinners and family gatherings, pretending to be someone I wasn't, watching my life slip away year by year? I thought about something Ethan had told me once, early in our relationship. We'd been lying on his couch, his head on my chest, talking about our futures. I used to think I had to choose between being happy and being loved, he'd said quietly. Like I couldn't have both. Like being gay meant I'd have to give up family, or acceptance, or belonging. But then I realized something. The people who truly love you will love all of you. Not the edited version. Not the performance. The real you. And the people who can't, they don't actually love you. They love their idea of you. At the time, I'd thought it sounded harsh. Now, sitting in the wreckage of my parents' discovery, I understood what he meant. Did my parents love me? Or did they love the Adrian they'd constructed straight, compliant, easy to understand? And if they only loved that version, was that really love at all? A soft knock interrupted my spiral. Adrian? My mother's voice muffled through the door. Can I come in? I quickly wiped my eyes, though I knew they were probably red and swollen. Yeah. She opened the door slowly, tentatively, like she was approaching a wounded animal. She'd changed into her pajamas, the soft floral ones I'd given her for Mother's Day 2 years ago. The normalcy of it made everything hurt more. Can I sit? She asked. I nodded, and she settled onto the floor beside me, her back against the door like mine. We sat there in silence for a moment, both staring at the opposite wall. I don't know how to do this, she finally said, her voice small. I don't know how to be your mother right now. The admission broke something in me. Mom, no, let me finish. She took a shaky breath. When you were born, I had all these dreams for you. Your first day of school, your graduation, your wedding someday. And in all those dreams you were, well, I had certain expectations. I thought I knew how your life would go. She turned to look at me, her eyes glistening with fresh tears. But you're telling me that all those dreams, all those expectations, they were never real? They were for someone who doesn't exist. I do exist, Mom, I said softly. I'm still me. I'm still your son. I still got good grades and made you proud and tried my best at everything. The only thing that's different is now you know I'm in love with a man instead of a woman. That's not a small thing, Adrian. I know. But it's not a bad thing either. She was quiet for a long moment, processing. Then, tell me about him. About Ethan. How did you meet? The question surprised me. It felt like a small olive branch, or maybe just curiosity. Either way, I grabbed onto it. We met in Introduction to Environmental Ethics last spring, I said, a small smile tugging at my lips despite everything. He sat next to me on the first day because all the other seats were taken. He had this ridiculous coffee cup bright yellow, covered in bee puns. Be happy, be kind, stuff like that. I remember thinking he seemed so comfortable with himself, confident, and you liked him right away. I tried not to, I admitted. I was still telling myself I could ignore these feelings. But then we got paired together for a project, and we spent all this time together, and he was everything I'd been looking for without knowing I was looking. We became friends first. Real friends. And then, one night, we were studying late at the library, and he just looked at me and said, I really want to kiss you right now. Would that be okay? My mother made a soft sound, something between surprise and sadness. No one had ever asked my permission like that before, I continued. Like my feelings mattered. Like I had a choice. And I said yes, and he kissed me. And for the first time in my life, everything made sense. All the confusion, all the shame I'd been carrying, it just evaporated. Because I finally understood this was who I was supposed to be. We sat in silence again, but this time it felt different. Less hostile, more contemplative. Your father won't change his mind, she finally said. You know that, right? He's very set in his beliefs. What about you, Mom? What do you believe? She didn't answer right away. When she did, her voice was barely a whisper. I believe I love my son, and I believe I'm terrified. Terrified of what people will say, of what this means for our family, of her voice broke, of losing you. I reached over and took her hand. She squeezed back, hard. You won't lose me, I promised. Unless you choose to. She nodded, tears spilling over. Then she stood, kissed the top of my head like she used to when I was little, and left without another word. I stayed on the floor until the rain stopped and the house fell silent. Then I did the only thing I could do. I texted Ethan. Can you talk tomorrow? I need to see you. I'll explain everything. His response came within seconds. Whatever it is, we'll figure it out together. I promise. I love you. I love you too. I just hoped love would be enough. The campus coffee shop was unusually crowded for a Wednesday afternoon, filled with students cramming for midterms, and the familiar sounds of espresso machines hissing and indie music playing overhead. I'd chosen a corner table in the back, partially hidden by a large potted plant. Because especially no, I felt like I needed to hide. Ethan arrived exactly on time, carrying 2 cups of coffee. He'd remembered my order. Medium roast, with a splash of oat milk, no sugar. The small gesture made my throat tight with emotion. Hey, he said softly, setting the cup in front of me before sliding into the seat across from me. His eyes were searching my face, concern etched in every line of his expression. Adrian, what happened? You've barely texted since yesterday, and when you called this morning? You sounded, they know, I interrupted, unable to hold it in any longer. My parents? They found out about us. Ethan's face went pale. He reached across the table, taking my hand in both of his. His palms were warm, grounding. How? I told him everything. The forgotten phone. My mother's tears. My father's ultimatum. The deadline hanging over my head like a guillotine blade. By the time I finished, Ethan's jaw was clenched, his blue eyes stormy with barely controlled anger. He can't do that, Ethan said firmly. He can't force you to choose between your identity and your family. That's manipulative and cruel, and he's my father, I said quietly. And he genuinely believes he's trying to save me. Save you from what? From being happy? From being yourself? Ethan's voice had risen slightly, drawing a few glances from nearby tables. He lowered it again, but the intensity remained. Adrian, conversion therapy is harmful, right? It's been condemned by every legitimate medical organization. It causes depression, anxiety, sometimes worse. I won't let you do that to yourself. I don't want to, I said quickly. I'm not going to. But Ethan, they're my parents. They're my family. If I lose them, then they've chosen to lose you, he said, his voice gentle but firm. And I know that hurts. God, I know it does. But you can't sacrifice who you are to keep people who won't accept you. I pulled my hand back, wrapping both around my coffee cup for something to hold on to. The warmth seeped into my palms but did nothing to thaw the cold knot in my chest. Easy for you to say, I said, and immediately regretted the bitterness in my tone. Your parents threw you a coming-out party, Ethan. They have a pride flag in their front yard. Your dad asked me about my pronouns the first time I met him. You have no idea what it's like to— You're right, he interrupted softly. I don't, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry you're going through this. He paused, his expression pained. But Adrian, I need you to hear me. Whatever you decide, I'll support you. If you need to take a break from us, to figure things out with your family, I'll understand. If you need space, I'll give it to you. But please, please don't let them convince you that there's something wrong with who you are. Don't let them send you somewhere that will try to break the most beautiful parts of you. Tears burned behind my eyes. What if I lose everything? Then we'll build something new. Together. He reached across the table again, and this time I let him take my hand. You're not alone in this. You have me. You have Maya and Josh. You have a whole community of people who understand what you're going through. Your family doesn't have to be the people you're born to. Sometimes it's the people you choose. Wanted to believe him. I wanted to be brave enough to choose myself, to choose us, to walk away from my parents' ultimatum with my head held high. But the weight of 22 years of family, tradition, and expectations was crushing. I need time, I finally said. I have until Sunday. Can you give me until then? Pain flashed across Ethan's face, but he nodded. Of course, but promise me something? What? Promise me you'll talk to someone. A counselor, a therapist. Someone objective who can help you process this. Not just your parents' voices in your head or mine. Your own voice. What does Adrian want? It was a good question. The problem was, I didn't know anymore. Carmen Rodriguez had not slept properly in 3 days. She lay in bed next to her husband, listening to his steady breathing, while her own mind raced in endless circles. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw her son's face, the pain in his eyes when Roberto issued that ultimatum, the vulnerability when he'd told her about Ethan, the love in his voice when he described that first kiss. For the first time in my life, everything made sense. Adrian's words haunted her. She thought about her own life at 22. She'd been planning a wedding, picking out china patterns, excited about the future she'd been raised to want. She'd loved Roberto, still did, but she'd never had to fight for that love. Never had to choose between her heart and her family. Never had to be brave. Carmen slipped out of bed carefully, padding downstairs in her robe. The house was dark and silent. She made herself to chamomile, though she knew it wouldn't help, and sat at the kitchen table where, just 3 days ago, her entire world had shifted. Her phone lay on the table. She picked it up, hesitating only a moment before opening her browser. She'd been researching. Secretly, in stolen moments, when Roberto was at work or in the shower, she'd read articles about sexual orientation, about the science behind it, about the experiences of LGBTQ people and their families. She'd read testimonies from parents who'd rejected their children and the devastating consequences. She'd read about conversion therapy, the real research. Not the propaganda the church pamphlets promoted. Dan felt physically sick. And tonight, after another day of watching her son move through the house like a ghost, she'd found herself on a forum for parents of LGBTQ children. The stories there shook her. Parents talking about their journeys from rejection to acceptance. The pain of watching their children suffer. The regret of lost years. The joy of reconciliation. One post in particular had struck her. I spent 2 years estranged from my daughter because I couldn't accept that she was gay. 2 years of missing birthdays, holidays, everyday moments I'll never get back. When I finally came to my senses and reached out, she forgave me, but I'll never forgive myself. I chose doctrine over my child, and it nearly destroyed us both. To any parent reading this, your child is the same person they were before you knew. The only thing that's changed is your knowledge. Don't make my mistake. Carmen had read that post 17 times. She heard footsteps on the stairs and quickly closed her phone. But it was too late. Adrian appeared in the doorway, also unable to sleep, looking surprised to see her. "Mom? Couldn't sleep," she said simply. "You either—" He shook his head, moving to the cabinet to get his own mug. They made tea together in comfortable silence, a ritual they'd shared since he was a child having nightmares. "I've been thinking," Carmen said once they were both seated, hands wrapped around warm mugs, "about what you said, about praying to be different." Adrian looked up at her, guarded. "I didn't know you felt that way," she continued, her voice thick. "I didn't know you were hurting so much. All those years and I never saw it. I got good at hiding," he said quietly. "Too good." She took a shaky breath. "Adrian, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Can you do that?" He nodded. "Are you happy? With Ethan? With this life you've been living? Are you genuinely happy?" She watched her son's face transform. The guardedness melted away, replaced by something soft and luminous. "Yes," he said simply. "Mom, I've never been happier. For the first time in my life, I don't feel like I'm pretending. I don't feel broken or wrong or like I need to be fixed. I feel like me. The real me, Carmen felt tears sliding down her cheeks. And if your father and I can't accept this, if we can't accept him, Adrian's expression crumpled. Then I lose my family, and it will destroy me. But Mom, I can't go back into the closet. I can't unlearn how good it feels to be myself. I can't let you send me to conversion therapy. I'd rather lose you than lose myself again. The words were like a knife to her heart, but Carmen recognized the truth in them, and more importantly, she recognized the strength. Her son was braver than she'd ever been. I don't want to lose you, she whispered. Then don't. Carmen reached across the table. Taking her son's hand, really looking at him, seeing him, maybe for the first time in years. I need time too, she said. To understand, to learn, to adjust my thinking. This goes against everything I was raised to believe. But Adrian, you're my son. You're my baby boy. And I can see how much pain this is causing you. I can see how scared you are. And that matters more to me than any doctrine. What about Dad? Carmen's jaw tightened. Your father is. He's struggling with this. His faith is very important to him, but so is his family. I'm going to talk to him. Really talk to him. And in the meantime, I want you to know something. What? Whatever you decide, whatever happens on Sunday, you will always be my son. Always. And I will always love you. It wasn't acceptance. Not yet. But it was something. A crack in the wall, letting light through. Adrian came around the table and hugged her tight. And Carmen held her son like she used to when he was small. Wishing she could protect him from the world, from judgment, from everything that might hurt him, but she couldn't. All she could do was choose whether to be part of that hurt or part of his healing. Friday afternoon. Adrian's phone rang with a number he didn't recognize. Local area code. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. Hello? Adrian, it's Father Miguel. Adrian's blood ran cold. Father Miguel was their family's priest, a man who'd known Adrian since he was baptized as an infant. If his parents had brought the church into this, I know what you're thinking. Father Miguel said quickly, his voice warm and reassuring. But your parents didn't call me. Your mother did, and not for the reason you might think. She asked me to speak with you. Not to lecture you or try to change you, just to talk. Would you be willing to meet with me? Every instinct told Adrian to say no. But there was something in the priest's voice, genuine compassion, not condemnation, that made him hesitate.
What do you want to talk about?
Your happiness, Father Miguel said simply. And what comes next? I promise you, Adrian, this is not an ambush. I'm not here to judge you. I'm here to support you, if you'll let me. 30 minutes later, Adrian found himself sitting across from Father Miguel in the priest's modest office at St. Catherine's. The space was lined with books. An afternoon sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating dust motes in the air. Father Miguel was in his late 50s. With graying hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses, he poured them both coffee from a carafe on his desk. Thank you for coming, he said, settling into his chair. I know this must be confusing. That's an understatement, Adrian said carefully. Father, if you're going to tell me that being gay is a sin, or that I need to be celibate, or I'm not, Father Miguel interrupted gently. Adrian, I'm going to tell you something that very few people know. When I was young, before I entered the seminary, I was engaged to be married to a wonderful woman named Margaret. We'd been together for 3 years, and everyone expected us to have a beautiful life together. He paused, taking a sip of his coffee. But I couldn't go through with it, because I realized that I didn't love her the way a husband should love a wife. I loved her deeply, but not romantically. And I was attracted to men, not women. This was the 1980s, Adrian. Being gay wasn't something you could be open about, especially not if you wanted to serve the church. Adrian stared at him, stunned. You're gay? I am, Father Miguel confirmed. And I made the choice to pursue priesthood, which meant accepting celibacy. But that was my choice, Adrian. My path. It doesn't have to be yours. The church says the church is made up of humans, and humans are flawed. We interpret Scripture through our own biases and cultural contexts. Some people in the church believe that homosexuality is incompatible with faith. Others, including many theologians and even some bishops, believe that God's love encompasses all expressions of love between consenting adults. He leaned forward. What I believe is that God created you exactly as you are, and God doesn't make mistakes. Adrian felt tears threatening again. He'd spent so many years being told by religious authorities that who he was contradicted God's plan. Hearing the opposite from a priest felt surreal. Why are you telling me this? Because your mother came to me in tears, terrified that she was losing her son. And because I remember what it was like to be young and confused and convinced that I had to choose between my faith and my truth. I don't want you to carry that burden. My father won't see it that way. No, Father Miguel agreed. He probably won't. Your father's a good man, Adrian, but he's also very rigid in his beliefs. Changing his mind will take time, if it happens at all. But that's not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to yourself to live authentically and find your own relationship with faith, whatever that looks like for you. They talked for over an hour. Father Miguel shared resources books written by LGBTQ Christians, organizations that supported queer people of faith, stories of families who'd found their way to acceptance. He didn't try to make Adrian's decision for him, but he offered something equally valuable: permission to trust himself. As Adrian was leaving, Father Miguel placed a hand on his shoulder. Whatever you decide on Sunday, know this: you are beloved. You are valued. You are exactly who you're meant to be. And there is a place for you in God's house, even if some people can't see that yet. Adrian drove home with those words echoing in his mind, feeling something he hadn't felt since his parents discovered his secret: hope. Ethan's apartment was small but cozy, filled with plants and second-hand furniture and books stacked on every surface. Adrian sat on the familiar couch, his head in Ethan's lap. While Ethan's fingers ran gently through his hair, they'd spent the evening talking through everything. Carmen's late-night conversation, the impossible weight of the choice ahead. Now they were just existing together in comfortable silence, the television playing some nature documentary neither was really watching. I'm scared, Adrian admitted quietly. I know, baby. I know. What if I choose you and regret it? What if years from now, I'm sitting at a holiday table with your family instead of mine, and all I can think about is what I gave up? Ethan's hands stilled in his hair. Then, we deal with that if it happens. Regret is part of being human, Adrian. We all wonder about the roads not taken, but you can't live your life based on hypothetical regrets. You have to make the choice that lets you sleep at night. What if I choose them? What if I tell my dad I'll do whatever he wants and I lose you? Then you lose me, Ethan said softly, and Adrian could hear the pain in his voice. And that will destroy me. But it's still your choice to make. Adrian sat up, turning to face him. Ethan's eyes were glistening with unshed tears. I don't want to lose you, Adrian said fiercely. These 8 months with you have been the best of my life. You make me laugh and feel safe and seen. You challenge me to be better. You love me in a way I didn't think I deserved to be loved. I don't want to give that up, but there are my parents. They raised me and loved me and sacrificed for me. How do I just walk away from that? Ethan cupped Adrian's face in his hands, his thumbs gently wiping away tears Adrian didn't realize had fallen. You're not walking away from them, Adrian. They're pushing you away. There's a difference. And maybe if you stand firm, if you show them that you're going to live your truth regardless of their approval, maybe they'll eventually come around. Your mom already seems like she's starting to question things. People can change, and if they don't, then you'll grieve what you've lost, and then you'll heal, and then you'll build a beautiful life anyway, because you're strong enough to do that. I know you are. Continues 7:31 a.m. They held each other as the documentary played on. The narrator describing the migration patterns of monarch butterflies, how they traveled thousands of miles to find home, how they faced impossible odds, how they persevered. Around midnight, Ethan led Adrian to his bedroom. They lay together fully clothed, on top of the covers, wrapped around each other, neither wanting to sleep and lose these last hours of not knowing. Whatever happens tomorrow, Ethan whispered into the darkness, I want you to know something. What? Loving you has been the greatest privilege of my life. You've taught me what it means to be brave. And no matter what your father says, no matter what anyone says, what we have is real and good and worth fighting for. Adrian kissed him then, soft and slow and aching with everything he couldn't say. They stayed like that until sunrise, holding on to each other and hoping it would be enough. Sunday. Morning arrived with cloudless skies and the kind of crisp autumn air that usually made Adrian feel alive. Today, it just made him feel exposed, like there was nowhere to hide from what was coming. He got dressed carefully, khakis and a button-down shirt. The kind of outfit his father approved of. Armor, in a way. He looked at himself in the mirror and barely recognized the person staring back. When had he become so small, so afraid? The church service was torture. Adrian sat between his parents in their usual pew, 4th row from the front on the left side. He'd sat in this exact spot every Sunday for as long as he could remember. It had always felt like belonging. Today, it felt like a cage. Father Miguel was giving the homily, and Adrian wondered if it was coincidence or divine intervention that his topic was the story of the prodigal son. We often focus on the son who left, Father Miguel was saying, his voice carrying through the sanctuary. We talk about his journey, his mistakes, his return. But today, I want us to consider the father. A father who watched his son leave, knowing he might never come back. A father who kept watching the road, hoping. And when his son finally appeared on the horizon, what did he do? Did he wait for an apology? Did he demand the son prove he'd changed? No, he ran to him. He embraced him. He celebrated his return. Adrian felt his mother shift beside him. His father remained stone-faced. The lesson here isn't just about forgiveness, Father Miguel continued. It's about unconditional love. The father didn't love his son because of what he did or didn't do. He loved his son because he was his son. That was enough. That was everything. The words hung in the air like an invitation. Adrian wondered if anyone else could feel the weight of them, the way they seemed directed at the three of them sitting in that pew. After the service, they drove home in silence. The Sunday roast was already cooking. Carmen had put it in before they left Anne. The house smelled like rosemary and garlic. Normally, Adrian loved Sunday dinners. Today, his stomach was twisted in knots. They sat at the dining table. It's the same table where this had all begun 4 days ago. Carmen brought out the food, serving everyone automatically, her hands trembling slightly. No one had spoken yet. The silence was suffocating. Finally, Roberto set down his fork. Adrian, have you made your decision? Adrian looked at his father, really looked at him. He saw the gray in his hair that hadn't been there a few years ago, the lines around his eyes, the pride and fear and love all mixed together in his expression. He saw a man who genuinely believed he was doing the right thing, and Adrian realized something. He couldn't make his father understand. He could only make his own choice. I have, Adrian said, his voice steadier than he felt, and Adrian took a deep breath. This was it. The moment everything changed. I love you both. You're my parents, and you've given me everything. I know this isn't easy for you. I know it challenges everything you believe. But Dad, Mom, I'm gay. That's not going to change whether I'm in conversion therapy or not. It's not a choice or a phase or something that can be fixed. It's part of who I am, as fundamental as my eye color or my handedness. Roberto's jaw clenched. So you're choosing let me finish, please? Adrian was surprised when his father nodded. I'm choosing to live authentically. I'm choosing to love who I love. And yes, that means I'm choosing Ethan. But I'm not choosing him over you. I'm choosing myself. I'm choosing mental health and happiness and a life where I don't have to pretend. And I'm praying that someday you'll choose to be part of that life. You know what I said? Roberto said, his voice hard. If you make this choice, Roberto. Carmen's voice cut through, stronger than Adrian had ever heard it. Both men turned to look at her in surprise. She was sitting up straight, her hands folded in front of her on the table. Tears streaming down her face, but her expression resolved.
Ow.
She said firmly. No, I'm not doing this. Carmen, you discussed. You decided. You gave our son an ultimatum without consulting me. She turned to Adrian, her eyes full of love and pain and determination. Baby, I've done a lot of thinking and praying these past few days, and I've realized something. Father Miguel's homily today. That father didn't put conditions on his love. He didn't make his son choose. He just loved him, and that's what I want to do. Carmen, the scripture is clear, Roberto started. The scripture is open to interpretation, she countered, her voice shaking but firm. And I've been doing research. Real research, not just reading what the church pamphlets say. Do you know what happens to kids who go through conversion therapy? They don't become straight, Roberto. They become depressed. They become suicidal. The medical community has condemned it. Even some religious organizations have condemned it. You've been researching behind my back? I've been trying to understand our son. Carmen stood now, her napkin falling to the floor. I've been trying to figure out how to be a good mother in a situation I never imagined facing. And you know what I've learned? That there are thousands of parents out there who kick their children out, who cut them off, who chose doctrine over family. And do you know what happens to those parents? She didn't wait for an answer. They regret it. They spend years, decades sometimes, estranged from their children. They miss weddings and grandchildren and life itself because they were too proud or too scared or too rigid to accept that their child was different than they expected. And I refuse to be one of those parents. The room was silent except for Carmen's heavy breathing. Roberto stared at his wife like he'd never seen her before. So that's it? He said quietly. You're just going to accept this? Accept him bringing shame to our family, spitting in the face of our faith. Our faith teaches love, Roberto. It teaches compassion and acceptance and meeting people where they are. Or at least, that's the faith I choose to follow. She moved to stand behind Adrian's chair, placing her hands on his shoulders. This is our son. He's the same person he was a week ago, a month ago, his entire life. The only thing that's changed is our knowledge. And if you can't accept that, if you really are going to force him to choose, then you're also forcing me to choose. Adrian's heart was pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. What are you saying? Roberto asked, his voice dangerous. Die. I'm saying that if you kick Adrian out, I'm going with him. The words landed like a bomb. Adrian twisted in his chair to look up at his mother in shock. She was crying openly now, but her hands on his shoulders were steady. You would leave me? Your husband? For this? Roberto gestured at Adrian, his face a mask of betrayal and disbelief. I would leave any situation where my child was being harmed, Carmen said. And that includes this one. I love you, Roberto. I've loved you for 25 years. But I love our son too, and I will not watch him suffer because we can't accept who he is. Roberto stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. For a long moment, he just stared at them, both his wife and his son, united against him. Adrian saw something crack in his father's expression, some wall beginning to crumble. I need time, Roberto finally said, his voice hoarse. I need to think. He walked out of the dining room, and they heard his footsteps going upstairs. Then the door to his study closing firmly. Carmen sank into the chair next to Adrian, suddenly exhausted. Adrian grabbed her hand. Mom, you don't have to leave. I can't ask you to give up your marriage for me. You're not asking, she said, squeezing his hand. I'm choosing, the same way you're choosing. And honestly, Adrian, I'm tired of being afraid. I'm tired of letting other people's opinions dictate how I live my life. Maybe it's time I chose myself too. They sat there together, hands clasped. Both of them trembling with adrenaline and relief, in fear of what came next. Adrian had spent the night at Ethan's apartment. Too emotionally wrung out to stay in his house with the tension thick enough to cut. His mother had texted him around midnight. Your father is still in his study. I'm giving him space. I love you. We'll figure this out now. Sitting in the campus quad with Ethan, Maya, and Josh, Adrian felt like he was existing in a strange limbo between his old life and whatever came next. Your mom is a badass, Maya declared, munching on a protein bar. She was a whirlwind of energy and opinions, and one of Adrian's best friends since freshman year. Seriously? The way she just laid down the law? Chef's kiss. She surprised me, Adrian admitted. I never thought she'd actually stand up to my dad like that. People can surprise you, Josh said quietly. He was the calm to Maya's storm, thoughtful and reserved. My dad was the same way when my sister came out as trans. He was so stuck in his ways, so convinced he was right. But eventually, love won. It took time, but it won. How much time? Adrian asked, needing to know. About 6 months before he really started trying. A year before he fully came around. But Adrian, everyone's timeline is different. Some parents change in days. Some never do. You can't control that. You can only control your own choices. Ethan had been quiet, just holding Adrian's hand and providing silent support. Now he spoke up. Whatever happens with your dad, you know you have a place with me, right? My parents already said you could stay with us if you need to. Adrian felt his throat tighten with emotion. Your parents are incredible. There, Ethan agreed with a smile. But so is your mom. And hey, maybe your dad'll come around too. Yesterday was a lot for him to process. Adrian wanted to believe that. But he also knew his father's stubbornness, his unwillingness to bend once he decided something was a matter of principle. His phone buzzed. A text from his mother. Can you come home? Your father wants to talk. Adrian's stomach dropped. I have to go. When Adrian pulled into the driveway, both his parents' cars were there. He sat for a moment, gathering his courage before heading inside. They were both in the living room, his mother on the couch, his father standing by the window. The afternoon light cast long shadows across the floor. Adrian, his father said without preamble, "Sit down." Adrian sat, his back straight, preparing for whatever came next. Roberto paced for a moment, his hands clasped behind his back, the same stance he'd had when delivering the ultimatum. But his face was different now. Less angry, more tired, more uncertain. I've been doing a lot of thinking, he finally said. And praying. And talking to Father Miguel. Adrian's eyebrows rose. You talked to Father Miguel? He called me this morning. Said he'd had a conversation with your mother and wanted to speak with me as well. Roberto paused, turning to look directly at Adrian. He told me something I didn't know. About himself. So Father Miguel had come out to his father too. Adrian wasn't sure if that was brave or reckless, or both. He also told me something else, Roberto continued. He said that in all his years of ministry, he's seen dozens of families torn apart by this issue. And do you know what he said was the common thread among the families that recovered? Adrian shook his head. Love, Roberto said simply, not agreement. Not approval, just love. The families that stayed together were the ones where the parents loved their children more than they loved being right. He sat down in the armchair across from Adrian, suddenly looking older than his 53 years. I don't understand this, Adrian. I don't know if I ever will. Everything in me still says this is wrong, that it goes against God's plan, that you're making a mistake. He held up his hand when Adrian started to protest. But your mother is right about one thing. You're my son. You've always been a good son, kind, responsible, hardworking, and nothing about that has changed. Dad, let me finish. Roberto's voice was rough with emotion. When you told us about Ethan, about how he makes you feel, I heard something in your voice I'd never heard before. Joy. Pure, uncomplicated joy. And as much as it pains me to admit this, I realized I'd never heard that in your voice when we talked about girls you dated. It was always performative, forced. Adrian felt tears welling up. His father had noticed. All those years of trying so hard to seem normal, and his father had seen through it. I'm not saying I accept this, Roberto clarified, and Adrian's heart sank. I'm saying I accept you, and I'm saying I'm willing to try. To learn, too. To meet this Ethan person, if you still want me to, Roberto Carmen whispered, her own tears flowing. But I have conditions, his father continued. And there it was, the familiar need for control, for rules. But somehow, right now, Adrian didn't mind. It was progress. You continue going to church with us, at least for now. Not because I think you need fixing, but because it's important to our family. You don't flaunt this relationship. I'm not ready for that yet. Give me time to adjust before we tell the extended family. And you be patient with me, Adrian. I'm going to mess up. I'm going to say the wrong things. But I'm going to try. It wasn't acceptance. It wasn't even close to what Ethan's parents had offered. But it was something. A door left open instead of slammed shut. I can do that, Adrian said, his voice thick. Dad, I can absolutely do that. Roberto nodded stiffly, then stood and walked over to Adrian. For a moment, they just looked at each other. Then Roberto pulled his son into a hug, awkward and rigid and brief, but genuine. I love you, Roberto said gruffly. Even when I don't understand you. I love you. I love you too, Dad. Carmen joined them, wrapping her arms around both of them, and they stood there in the living room like that, perfect, uncertain. But together, the coffee shop where Adrian had told Ethan everything had become one of their regular spots. Today, though, they weren't alone. Sitting across from them were Adrian's parents, both looking uncomfortable but present. It was the third time Roberto had agreed to meet Ethan, and the first time he'd initiated it himself. That felt significant. So, Roberto said, stirring his coffee with unnecessary focus, Ethan, your mother tells me you're studying environmental science. Yes, sir, Ethan replied politely. He'd been remarkably patient through Roberto's stilted attempts at conversation during their previous meetings. I'm particularly interested in urban conservation, finding ways to integrate green spaces and wildlife. Corridors into city planning. That's important work, Carmen said warmly. She'd taken to Ethan immediately, which had helped ease some of the tension. We need more young people thinking about these issues. What do you plan to do after graduation? Roberto asked, career-wise. I'm hoping to work for an environmental nonprofit, or possibly pursue a master's degree in urban planning. Adrian's actually been helping me research programs. Ethan glanced at Adrian with a small smile that made Adrian's heart skip. Roberto noticed the look. Something shifted in his expression. Not quite approval, but maybe acceptance of what he was seeing. You're good for him, Roberto said abruptly, surprising everyone. My son. He's happier since he met you. I can see that. Ethan blinked, clearly not expecting the admission. Thank you, sir. It means a lot. And for what it's worth, he's made my life better too. Adrian challenges me to be more thoughtful, more present. He's one of the best people I know. Roberto nodded slowly, and taking a visible breath. I want to apologize for the things I said when we first spoke. I was afraid of losing my son, of what people would think, of my own failure as a father. I lashed out. I understand, Ethan said graciously. And I appreciate the apology. I know this isn't easy for you. No, Roberto agreed. It's not. But my wife reminded me that being a parent means growing alongside your children, adapting, learning. So I'm trying to learn. Carmen reached over and squeezed her husband's hand, pride evident in her expression. They talked for another hour about school, about Ethan's volunteer work, about the upcoming holidays. It wasn't perfectly comfortable, but it was real, genuine, a foundation being built, slowly but surely. As they were leaving, Roberto pulled Adrian aside. I'm going to talk to your aunts and uncles, he said quietly. Tell them about you and Ethan. I want to do it right, without you having to worry about it hanging over your head. Adrian's eyes widened. Dad, you don't have to. I want to, Roberto interrupted. This is part of accepting you, really accepting you, not just tolerating your relationship in private, but acknowledging it publicly. I won't lie, I'm terrified. But you were terrified when you came out to us, and you did it anyway. I can be brave too. Adrian hugged his father, feeling the last of his guardedness melt away. They still had a long way to go. There would still be difficult conversations and awkward moments and fundamental disagreements, but they were going to get through it. Together, spring had arrived with an explosion of color. The campus was alive with flowering trees and students sprawled on the grass. Celebrating the end of finals, Adrian sat on a blanket under a cherry tree, Ethan's head resting on his lap while he studied for his last exam. Carmen had packed them a picnic lunch, way too much food, as always, and they'd been here for hours, just existing in this perfect bubble of peace. Adrian's phone buzzed. A text from his father. Dinner on Sunday? Bring Ethan. Your Aunt Maria wants to meet him. She's been asking questions. Good questions. Adrian smiled. 6 months ago, that text would have seemed impossible. Now it was just life. His life. Authentic and messy and beautiful. Good news? Ethan asked, looking up at him. The best, Adrian said, leaning down to kiss him. My aunt wants to meet you. The one your mom said might be an issue. The very same. Apparently she's been doing her own research. Ethan grinned. Your family is full of surprises. They really are. A shadow fell across them, and Adrian looked. Up to see Maya and Josh approaching with their own blankets and snacks. Room for 2 more? Maya asked. Always, Ethan said, making space. They settled in, and soon the conversation flowed, easily gossip about professors. Plans for summer, Josh's new boyfriend. Simple, normal things. The kind of things Adrian had dreamed about, but never thought he'd actually get to experience. At one point, Adrian caught himself just observing the scene. His chosen family and his biological family slowly merging into one. The boyfriend who loved him openly and without shame. The future. Stretching ahead of him, full of possibility instead of fear. You okay? Ethan asked softly, noticing his expression. Better than okay, Adrian said honestly. I'm happy. And he was.
Nice.
Despite everything, the pain of coming out, the terror of his father's ultimatum, the uncertainty of those early days, he'd made it through. They'd made it through because love, he'd learned, wasn't about choosing one thing over another. Wasn't about sacrificing yourself to make others comfortable. It was about being brave enough to be whole, to be yourself, and trusting that the people who truly loved you would find their way to acceptance. Some journeys took longer than others. Some relationships healed quickly, while others took time and work and patience. But standing in your truth, living authentically, loving openly, that was always worth it. Adrian looked at Ethan, who was now debating the merits of different superhero movies with Josh and Maya, his hands gesturing animatedly, his eyes bright with laughter. This beautiful, kind, patient man who'd stood by him through everything. I love you, Adrian said, interrupting the debate. Ethan turned to him with that smile, the one that still made Adrian's heart skip. I love you too. And in that moment, under the cherry blossoms with his friends around him and his family, both kind, supporting him, Adrian knew with absolute certainty he'd made the right choice. He'd chosen himself. In doing so, he'd gained everything.